The Federal Aviation Administration quietly shuts down airspace over El Paso for 10 days without explanation. In the early hours of Tuesday night, on the 10th of February, 2026, an announcement was issued so quietly that many residents of El Paso would not learn of it until the following morning. The Federal Aviation Administration released a series of official notices that would immediately halt all air traffic over El Paso and a vast surrounding region stretching into southern New Mexico. What made the decision so unsettling was not only its scale, but the complete absence of any clear explanation. For 10 full days, the skies above one of America's largest border cities would fall silent. The order, classified under national defense airspace, carried language that many aviation experts described as unusually severe. It warned that any aircraft entering the restricted zone without authorization could be intercepted, detained, and investigated by security personnel. Even more striking was the statement that the United States government reserved the right to use overwhelming force if an airborne craft were deemed a threat. Such wording was rarely seen outside of the most extreme national emergencies. The restriction took effect at 11:30 in the evening Mountain Time and was scheduled to remain in place until 11:30 at night on the 20th of February. Within that window, every category of flight was grounded. Commercial airliners, cargo transport, private aviation, law enforcement helicopters, military craft, and even medical evacuation flights were barred from operating. El Paso International Airport, normally a hub of constant movement, was forced into an abrupt and total shutdown. Local officials were caught entirely off guard. City authorities confirmed that they had received no prior warning before the notices were issued. Airport personnel scrambled to contact federal agencies for clarification, while airlines rushed to notify passengers of widespread cancellations. Travelers found themselves stranded, plans disrupted, and businesses across the region faced immediate economic ripple effects. Representative Veronica Escobar publicly addressed the growing concern, stating that her office had been informed there was no imminent threat to the city or its residents. Yet this reassurance only deepened the mystery. If there was no immediate danger, many wondered why such sweeping and historically rare restrictions had been enacted. Behind the scenes, even military installations appeared surprised. Sources indicated that personnel at nearby Fort Bliss had not been given advance notice either. Aviation observers noted that the restricted zone extended roughly 10 nautical miles in all directions from the airport, reaching upward to 17,000 feet. The closure blanketed nearly all of El Paso County while carefully stopping short of Mexican airspace just across the border. Attempts to obtain answers produced little clarity. When inquiries reached the Federal Aviation Administration's Special Operations Support Center, the response was as puzzling as the restriction itself. A representative explained that his office merely published the notices and had not been provided the reasoning behind them. The orders, he implied, had come from elsewhere. As the days passed, speculation spread rapidly. Residents watched unusually empty skies, broken only by the stillness that settled over the desert horizon. With no official explanation forthcoming, theories circulated ranging from classified defense operations to sensitive technological testing. The lack of transparency became as much a story as the shutdown itself. Mysterious images captured in Alaska. In the remote stillness of southeast Alaska, where dense forests press against winding ice-covered roads and winter silence blankets the land, a series of strange images has stirred quiet fascination and unease. The photographs were taken during what began as an ordinary outing between a father and his son, a simple drive along a frozen stretch of road on a small island community. The ice that day lay thick across the ground, measuring several inches deep, with very little sign of vehicle travel. It was a landscape untouched, calm, and seemingly undisturbed. As the pair prepared to turn back toward town, something unusual caught their attention along the roadside. Pressed into the snow were enormous tracks, spaced in a steady walking pattern, stretching forward into the distance. The impressions were unlike anything the witness had ever seen before. Living his first winter in the region, he was familiar only with common wildlife markings, yet these prints appeared far larger and more defined than expected. Their depth suggested significant weight, and their stride implied confident, purposeful movement. For comparison, the witness placed his own boot beside one of the impressions. His footwear measured 13 inches in length, yet the track beside it extended well beyond that size. The contrast was striking. The edges of the print appeared smooth but powerful, as though formed by something both heavy and sure-footed on the ice. Each step looked deliberate, leaving behind a trail that invited both curiosity and apprehension. Speculation quickly followed. Some considered whether oversized snowshoes could have created the markings, though the shape and pressure distribution did not fully align with typical equipment. Others wondered if an unknown animal, rarely seen and seldom documented, had crossed the frozen roadside under the cover of winter fog. Mysterious video filmed in Jamaica. In the quiet stillness of a humid Jamaican evening, a moment unfolded that would leave one homeowner deeply unsettled and searching for answers long after the night had passed. The man, standing in his yard as dusk faded into darkness, noticed something unusual perched atop a broken coconut tree that had long stood as a weathered remnant of past storms. At first glance, he assumed it was an animal resting in the crook of the splintered trunk. Yet as he looked closer, a chilling realization took hold. The figure sitting there did not resemble any creature he had ever seen before. He retrieved his phone and began recording. The being remained completely still, seated upright on the jagged top of the tree as though it had been placed there deliberately. Its small frame was humanoid in shape, with thin limbs and a posture that suggested awareness. What unsettled the witness most was not movement, but the absence of it. The figure did not flinch, did not shift, did not attempt to hide. It simply stared directly at him, unblinking, as though studying him in return. The silence of the moment amplified the tension. There were no rustling leaves, no animal calls, no wind brushing through the yard. The man later described the stillness as unnatural, as if the space around the tree had fallen into a pause separate from the rest of the world. Even the usual nighttime sounds of the island seemed to withdraw. What makes the footage even more compelling is the cultural and historical context surrounding it. Over several decades, scattered eyewitness accounts from remote regions of Jamaica have described encounters with small humanoid figures in forests, near riverbanks, and on isolated farmland. These reports, often shared quietly within communities, describe beings that watch from a distance, appearing briefly before vanishing without a trace. Though dismissed by some, the consistency of the descriptions has long intrigued amateur researchers. Many who study these encounters believe the island's dense interior landscapes could conceal undiscovered species, particularly in regions where human presence remains limited. Jamaica's caves, mountains, and deep vegetation create natural environments where unknown life forms could exist undetected. The figure on the coconut tree appeared to align eerily with these long-standing accounts, small in stature, humanoid in silhouette, and unnervingly observant. As the man continued filming, the being remained motionless, maintaining eye contact in a way that felt deliberate rather than accidental. Eventually, the witness lowered his phone, overcome by a sense that he was intruding on something not meant to be seen. By the time he looked back up, the tree stood empty. Mysterious apparition captured in family photo. Captured during what was meant to be an ordinary family moment, the photograph of the two sisters standing arm in arm at their father's home has since transformed into something far more unsettling. Taken roughly 15 years ago, the image was originally viewed as nothing more than a warm snapshot of sibling closeness. The girls, smiling brightly and dressed casually, posed in a softly lit room, unaware that the camera had recorded more than just their embrace. It was only years later, while sorting through a box of old printed photographs, that one of the sisters noticed something deeply disturbing. In the background, partially obscured within the doorway behind them, stood a dark, human-like figure. The shape appeared tall and shadowed, with what seemed to be long hair draped around its head and shoulders. Its presence was subtle enough to go unnoticed at first glance, yet once seen, it became impossible to ignore. What made the discovery even more chilling was the certainty shared by both sisters and their family. No one had been standing in that doorway when the photo was taken. The home had been quiet that day, occupied only by immediate relatives, none of whom matched the silhouette captured in the frame. The figure's posture, still and watchful, gave the impression that it had been observing the sisters silently from the background. As the photograph circulated among friends and extended family, many began to interpret the shape not as a trick of light or shadow, but as a genuine apparition. Some pointed to the density of the figure's outline, noting how it appeared darker and more defined than the surrounding shadows. Others remarked on the placement, perfectly framed within the doorway, as though intentionally present. The father's home itself reportedly held an unusual atmosphere long before the photograph resurfaced. Visitors had occasionally mentioned feeling watched when passing certain hallways, while unexplained noises were said to echo faintly during quiet evenings. Though these experiences were once dismissed as imagination, the image seemed to give them new weight. This woman shared a creepy image she captured while walking home. The image, captured on a dimly lit roadside late at night, has since unsettled all who have seen it. At first glance, the photograph appears ordinary: an empty stretch of road, distant lights flickering on the horizon, and the quiet stillness that often settles over rural areas after dark. Yet at the center of the frame sits a lone figure, draped in white, her form slumped forward in a posture that conveys deep sorrow. It was this silent, haunting presence that gave rise to the chilling story shared by the woman who witnessed the encounter firsthand. She had been out celebrating with a friend that evening, the kind of carefree night filled with music, laughter, and the fleeting joy of escape. As the night wore on and their funds ran low, the two chose to walk home rather than call for transportation. The roads were mostly empty, the air cool, and the distant hum of civilization barely audible. It was during this walk that they saw her, a woman sitting alone by the roadside, her shoulders trembling as she wept inconsolably. The friend's instinct was immediate compassion. She wanted to approach, to offer comfort, to ask what was wrong. Yet something about the scene stirred an unexplainable dread in the witness. A cold shiver ran down her spine, a primal warning that felt impossible to ignore. She urged her friend to keep their distance. Instead, they called out gently from afar, asking if the woman was all right. It was then that the crying changed. What had begun as the sound of grief twisted into something far more unsettling. The sobbing deepened, stretching into tones that felt unnatural, almost echoing in the still night air. Fear overtook them both, and without another word, they fled. The sound of the woman's cries lingering behind them long after they had run out of sight. The mysterious Argentina UFO image. The photograph taken on the 3rd of July 1960 in the rural expanse of Yacanto, Cordoba, Argentina, has long stood as one of the most compelling visual records within the study of unidentified aerial phenomena. Captured by Hugo F. Niotti, then a captain in the Argentine Air Force, the image has only recently resurfaced among investigative groups, reigniting fascination with an encounter that was as brief as it was profound. What makes the photograph so striking is not only the presence of the unusual object itself, but the quiet details surrounding it, details that seem to reinforce the authenticity of the moment. On that winter afternoon, at approximately 4:30, Captain Niotti was driving along the slick mountain road toward Cordoba. The weather was unsettled, with light drizzle and low cloud cover pressing down upon the landscape. As he maneuvered through a wide curve near Villa General Belgrano, his attention was drawn to an object hovering low to the ground just beyond the roadside. The sight was so unexpected that he immediately brought his vehicle to a stop. Stepping out with his camera in hand, he moved a short distance away and took a single photograph. The object, conical in shape, hovered silently, rotating slowly as it drifted parallel to the earth. Niotti later estimated its height to be between 7 and 8 meters, with a broad base and a smooth metallic surface devoid of seams or markings. The silence surrounding it was total, creating an atmosphere that he would later describe as deeply unreal. As he attempted to prepare a second shot, the object accelerated with astonishing speed, vanishing into the low cloud bank within seconds. When the film was developed, the image revealed even more mysteries than Niotti had perceived. The base of the object appeared unnaturally dark, almost absorbing light, while the rest of the structure showed a faint contrast against the sky. Investigators noted how sharply defined the edges were, more distinct than other elements in the frame, suggesting a solidity that defied atmospheric distortion. Yet one of the most discussed aspects of the photograph lies not in the sky, but on the ground below. In the pasture near the roadside stands a horse, its body angled away, but its head turned sharply toward the hovering object. The animal's posture conveys alertness, as though its attention had been captured by the presence above. Rural experts have often pointed out that horses grazing near roads typically ignore passing vehicles, remaining calm and undisturbed. The fact that this horse appeared focused on the object added a layer of behavioral confirmation to the sighting. Photogrammetric analysis conducted by Argentine investigators used the horse as a reference point for scale and distance. Their findings suggested the animal stood roughly 80 meters from the road, placing the object at no more than 50 meters from Captain Niotti's vantage point. This proximity reinforced his description of the craft's size and silent operation, making the encounter all the more extraordinary. Perhaps most revealing was Niotti's own reaction upon seeing the developed photograph. He expressed genuine surprise at the presence of the horse, having not noticed it at all during the encounter. His focus had been entirely consumed by the object, a detail investigators viewed as a sign of the intensity of the moment rather than fabrication. Mysterious image captured in London. In the heart of London's historic theatre district, where centuries of performances, applause, and whispered legends linger in the walls, a simple photograph taken inside the Dominion Theatre would soon become the focus of chilling fascination. The image was captured one quiet evening in January, when a couple decided to take a casual selfie while seated together inside the grand venue. At first glance, the photograph appeared ordinary, showing the pair smiling softly beneath the warm glow of the theatre's interior lighting. Yet it was only later, upon closer inspection, that something deeply unsettling revealed itself. Behind the couple, partially obscured by shadow and seating, appeared the faint but unmistakable figure of a young girl. Her presence was subtle yet striking, her face pale and her expression distant, as though she were quietly observing from another time. The positioning of the figure did not match anyone the couple remembered sitting near them. In fact, they were certain that no one had been directly behind them when the photograph was taken. The discovery left them shaken, prompting deeper investigation into the theatre's long and storied past. The man in the photograph, Stuart Cheverels, began researching the history of the Dominion Theatre, hoping to find some explanation for the mysterious figure. What he uncovered only deepened the mystery. Historical records spoke of a young girl named Eleanor Cooper, said to have passed away within the theatre in 1814 when she was only 14 years old. Accounts described her as lingering within the building's corridors and seating areas, her presence occasionally felt by staff and visitors alike. The mysterious Washington incident. The sighting that took place over Kelso, Washington, has since become one of the most discussed aerial mysteries in the region, not only because of the clarity of the photographs, but because of the consistency between the two eyewitness testimonies. Captured on the 12th of December, 2023, the object appeared suddenly in the early evening sky, hovering above a quiet residential neighborhood. What began as a curious observation quickly turned into an encounter that neither witness would ever forget. The object itself was described as a black disc, smooth in appearance and unlike any conventional aircraft known to the observers. It moved in a slow, almost cautious manner at first, drifting gently from side to side as though surveying the area below. Its motion was silent, producing no engine noise, no wind disturbance, and no visible propulsion system. This silence added an unsettling quality to the encounter, as if the object operated beyond the limits of known aviation technology. As the witnesses continued to watch, the object suddenly changed behavior. Without warning, it accelerated upward at an extraordinary speed, covering an estimated 150 meters in mere moments. The shift from slow drifting to rapid flight was so abrupt that it left both individuals stunned. Based on their observation and later analysis, they estimated the object's speed to be close to 800 kilometers per hour, a velocity difficult to comprehend given the lack of sound or visible thrust. Additional details further deepened the mystery. The craft was estimated to be approximately 3 meters wide and just over 1 meter in length, making it relatively compact yet unmistakably structured. Its disc-like shape appeared symmetrical, with no wings, rotors, or stabilizing features. The surface seemed matte black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, which made it appear almost like a shadow moving against the sky. Stranger still were the environmental reactions reported during the sighting. Subtle electrical interference was noted in the area, and nearby animals reportedly became restless and alert, reacting before the object accelerated away. Such reactions suggested that whatever powered the craft may have emitted an energy field not visible to the human eye. The photographs taken that evening quickly circulated among researchers and enthusiasts, many noting how the object's structure remained consistent across multiple frames. The clarity of the images, combined with the calm credibility of the witnesses, elevated the case from a simple sighting to a subject of ongoing investigation. The strange case of Melissa Casillas. The disappearance of Melissa Casillas stands as one of the most unsettling modern mysteries to emerge from northern New Mexico, a case marked not only by unanswered questions, but by the quiet unraveling of an ordinary morning that should have ended like any other. At 53 years old, Melissa was deeply rooted in her community, her family, and her daily routines. She lived in Rancho de Taos with her husband of 20 years, Mark Casillas, and their adult daughter Sierra, with whom she shared an exceptionally close bond. Those who knew her described her as warm, steady, and quietly resilient, a soft-spoken yet tough-spirited woman whose devotion to her loved ones shaped every part of her life. Professionally, Melissa worked as an administrative assistant at Los Alamos National Laboratory, where her husband was also employed. Outside of work, she was widely recognized in the hunting and archery world. An avid outdoors woman, she had won multiple competitions and built a reputation as someone skilled, disciplined, and capable in wilderness environments. Her father, Jose Mondragon, once described her as a strong gal who could survive in the wilderness for days, a reflection of both her physical capability and inner resolve. Yet behind this composed exterior, there were signs that unseen pressures had been building. Years earlier, her daughter Sierra had been involved in a serious vehicle accident that led to a complicated legal settlement. While Melissa had not been directly involved in the accident, she had played a role in navigating the legal aftermath. Financial and legal tensions surrounding the case had created strain, and although details remained private, it was clear that the situation weighed heavily on her. On the morning of the 26th of June, Melissa's routine began as usual. At approximately 6:15 in the morning, she drove Mark to the laboratory for his shift. Shortly afterward, she realized she had forgotten her identification badge and decided she would work remotely from home instead. The plan was simple. She would return the car to Mark around 11 that morning, just as she often did. Nothing in their conversation felt unusual at the time. Around 7:30, Sierra woke and saw her mother arrive home about 15 minutes later. Melissa explained she'd forgotten her badge. Sierra accepted this without concern and left for work, noticing nothing out of the ordinary in her mother's demeanor. As the morning progressed, subtle irregularities began to surface. When 11 o'clock arrived and Melissa had not returned the car, Mark assumed she had simply become busy. That assumption shifted when Melissa's supervisor contacted him asking if she was all right, explaining she had not checked in. Shortly after midday, Melissa delivered lunch to Sierra at the cafe where she worked in Taos Plaza. Their interaction lasted only minutes, roughly between 12:50 and 12:57. Sierra later recalled that her mother seemed slightly quiet, but otherwise normal. She handed Melissa a check to deposit at the bank, an errand that should have taken little time. By early afternoon, concern deepened. Mark reached out to Sierra around 1:30, asking if Melissa had contacted her about picking him up. Sierra sent Melissa a screenshot of the message. It was seen, but never answered. At 2:18 that afternoon, Melissa was spotted walking eastbound along NM 518 near Talpa, heading toward Pot Creek, miles from home. A security camera at Kit Carson Electric Company captured footage of her wearing the same clothes from earlier, carrying a backpack. It was difficult to determine her emotional state. Family members later believed she had packed personal items such as a toothbrush and hair iron. Investigators believe she may have entered a vehicle shortly after that sighting, though no confirmation has been made. When Sierra returned home later that afternoon, she found Melissa's car parked outside. Inside the house, a deeply troubling discovery awaited. Melissa's work phone and keys sat on the table. In her office, her purse, personal phone, and wallet were found. Both phones had been wiped clean. Mark reported her missing around 5 that evening. Her disappearance stunned those closest to her. A family lake trip had been planned for the coming weekend, one she and Sierra had eagerly anticipated. She had also arranged to take time off work to support her mother through an upcoming knee replacement surgery scheduled for the 30th. She had been actively planning post-surgery care responsibilities with her sister. Nothing about her future plans suggested departure. In the weeks that followed, Mark and Sierra began uncovering evidence that Melissa had been under an immense amount of private stress, pressures she had kept hidden. They came to believe she may have left voluntarily, overwhelmed by burdens she never shared. They also questioned her claim about forgetting her badge, as Mark recalled seeing her swipe it that very morning. Tensions grew between different branches of the family, complicating search efforts and fueling speculation, though investigators have publicly stated that no single theory has been confirmed. Search teams mobilized quickly. Members of the archery community traveled from across the region, from El Paso, Clovis, and Colorado, to assist. Their efforts reflected how deeply respected Melissa was. Today, the mystery remains unresolved. Melissa Casillas is described as a Hispanic woman, 5 feet 4 inches tall, weighing approximately 115 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. Her tattoos, a dragon on her ankle, a dream catcher on her shoulder, and a bow and arrow on her arm, remain identifying markers in search bulletins. A reward of $5,000 stands for information leading to her safe return. The mystery of Imelda Keenan. The mystery of Imelda Keenan remains one of Ireland's most haunting unsolved disappearances, a case that has lingered in the public consciousness for decades, defined by unanswered questions, quiet heartbreak, and a family's unwavering belief that the truth has yet to surface. Imelda was just 22 years old when she vanished in January of 1994, stepping out of her apartment in Waterford City and, in doing so, leaving behind a trail of circumstances that many believe never added up. Born on the 24th of March in 1971 to parents Elizabeth and Florence Keenan, Imelda grew up in a close-knit family alongside her 3 brothers, Edward, Donald and Jerry, and her sister Mary. The family's roots lay in Mount Mellick in County Lowy, but by the 1970s, her brother Jerry had relocated to Waterford. The city's coastal beauty and vibrant atmosphere soon drew Imelda in as well. Jerry would later recall her awe upon visiting, describing how she spoke about the seaside being just a stone's throw from the city, marveling that such scenery could exist right outside her door. By the late 1980s, she had made Waterford her home. It was there that she met Mark Wall, a relationship that quickly deepened. By 1989, the couple were engaged and living together in a modest flat on William Street. They dreamed of marrying in Rome, though no date had been set. At the time, Imelda was studying computing at CTI Waterford, motivated by a desire to build a career in the growing world of technology. She envisioned a simple but meaningful life, work she enjoyed, a home by the sea, and children in the future. On the 3rd of January in 1994, what appeared to be an ordinary afternoon would mark the final confirmed movements of her life. According to her fiancé, Imelda prepared to leave their flat around 1:30 in the afternoon. She had washed her hair, applied her makeup, and even made him a cup of tea before saying she needed to go to the post office to collect her welfare payment and buy cat litter. One detail would later trouble her family deeply. That day was a Monday bank holiday, meaning the post office would have been closed. While some suggested she may have simply forgotten due to the festive season, her loved ones struggled to accept that explanation. They believed she was careful with her finances and unlikely to overlook something so important. Shortly after leaving, a local woman, a doctor's secretary, claimed to have seen Imelda near Lombard Street. She said Imelda paused in the road to let her car pass before walking around the corner near the Tower Hotel. However, this sighting would later become disputed, casting uncertainty over whether it truly occurred. Regardless, it stands as the final reported glimpse of Imelda alive. What followed only deepened the mystery. Imelda carried no change of clothes and had very little money. Her credit union account would remain untouched. Inside the flat, her glasses, cigarettes, and handbag were left behind, items she relied on daily, particularly her glasses due to her poor eyesight. Christmas presents remained unopened beneath the tree, including gifts she had purchased for family members. A wreath meant for her father's grave was also still there. To her family, these details spoke volumes. They believed she had never intended to go anywhere for long. In fact, they grew convinced she had not even made it into the new year, instead believing something had happened in the days leading up to Christmas in 1993. Despite these concerns, the initial investigation did not reflect the family's fears. Authorities categorized the case as a voluntary disappearance. Her home was not forensically examined, a decision that drew criticism and frustration from those closest to her. Opportunities to gather early evidence were lost, and the case quickly cooled. Communication between Imelda's fiancé and her family faded soon after she was reported missing, adding another layer of emotional strain, though no definitive conclusions were drawn from this distance. Searches were conducted, appeals were made, but no physical trace of Imelda was ever found. Years turned into decades. Her parents, Elizabeth and Florence, along with brothers Donald and Edward, passed on without learning what happened to their daughter and sister. The absence of answers left a quiet but enduring ache within the family. On the 30th anniversary of her disappearance in January of 2024, relatives revealed they had submitted new evidence to investigators. They expressed belief that individuals within Imelda's social circle held key information but had remained silent. Family members also shared that Imelda had endured a difficult period before her disappearance, facing pressures they felt had not been fully explored. Additional revelations surfaced about injuries she had sustained in the early 1990s, during which she had been seen using crutches and wearing a neck brace. Circumstances she had downplayed at the time. A year later, in January of 2025, authorities released an age-progressed image depicting how Imelda might appear today. While intended to renew public attention, the move was met with mixed feelings by her family, who remained convinced she had not lived beyond the day she vanished. More than 3 decades on, the case remains officially classified as a missing persons investigation. Yet for those who loved her, the passage of time has only solidified their belief that vital truths remain hidden. Her brother Jerry has spoken openly about his determination to keep her story alive, expressing hope that someone, someday, will come forward with the knowledge that could finally bring peace.